Eivin Kilcher seems to have it all at first glance. A close-knit family, freedom, and a way of life that most people can only imagine. However, something changed with time. Alaska, the last frontier. Fans noticed a shift in his general enthusiasm, a quieter presence, and his absence. What began as minor indicators gradually became unavoidable. Did years of working in difficult conditions take their toll? Behind the scenes conflicts that were never broadcast? Or maybe the pressure to ultimately maintain a picture-perfect frontier life grew too heavy. The more you examine it, the more it suggests something more profound. Emotional pressure, burnout, and a silent unraveling that might have been occurring for a long time before anyone noticed. Eivin Kilcher was born on March 6, 1983, and is the third generation to have grown up on the family's rocky homestead outside of Homer, Alaska. He has a strong bond with the land. His tale started here, and it's not just where he lives. His grandparents, Ulil and Ruth Kilcher, made the amazing trek from Switzerland to Alaska in the 1940s, in pursuit of a goal of simplicity and independence. And they were the ones who initially cut out the homestead from the Alaskan wilderness. Born in Switzerland in 1913, Ulil Kilcher was originally named Julius Jacob Kilcher. He had a keen interest in anthropology and a curious nature even as a youth. He learned how to live simply from various civilizations, while hitchhiking across Europe and North Africa at the age of 16. Swedish carpenters and the mountain people of the Carpathians taught him how to build log cabins, among other skills that would be crucial to his existence in Alaska. When he visited Alaska for the first time in 1936, he fell in love with the natural landscape. He returned and made it his permanent home by 1940. Ruth Helen Weber joined him a year later. Raised in Pratten, Switzerland, she received her first training as an opera singer. 3 days after arriving in Alaska, Ruth married Ulay. It is debatable if they were lifelong lovers or if they hardly knew one another prior to the wedding. They jumped right into frontier life, that much is certain. Ulay was given 160 acres by the government as long as he resided there, erected a building, and grew crops. Ruth and Ulay relocated to an old fox farm outside of Homer in 1944, which had stunning views of Kachemak Bay. They led one of the roughest lives possible. There was a one-room hut to call home, no running water, and no electricity. Electricity did not arrive to the homestead until 1952. They hunted, fished, reared cattle, and grew their own food to survive in the interim. Ulay used a 16mm camera to record their early homesteading life on film and slides. In order to give viewers a sense of the unadulterated beauty and adversity of Alaskan frontier life, he screened 2 documentaries based on his work around Europe between 1947 and 1958, A Pioneer Family in Alaska and The Last Frontier. The homestead expanded along with the Kilcher family. Fans of the Kilcher family will immediately identify Otto and Atz as 2 of the 8 children that Ulay and Ruth raised. Despite not being the eldest, Otto immediately distinguished himself with his spirit of adventure and practical inquiry. He had a deep connection to nature because he grew up surrounded by mountains, woods, and untamed canyons. But what really made him unique was his obsession with machinery and fixing things. Eivin was born with that same creative spirit. Being resourceful from the beginning was a necessity of life on the homestead. There was nothing else to do. Eivin was having adventures every day, while most children were just dreaming about them. Enveloped by the untamed splendor of Alaska, the mountains, the forest, and the changing of the seasons were more than just picturesque views. They served as his instructors. He began hunting, fishing, building, and contributing to the smooth operation of the Kilcher farm at a young age. He learned how to live in peace with nature, how to build, and how to thrive outside of a classroom. It was handed down as a way of life from one generation to the next. Eivin, however, did not simply inherit his family's perseverance. He contributed his originality to the mix. He is truly gifted at coming up with new ideas. Give him a stack of leftover lumber and junk metal. He'll probably come up with something helpful as well. It could be a homemade watercraft or a smokehouse. He is independent of stores when it comes to food. He hunts game, catches fish, and grows his own herbs and veggies. In a way that most people can only dream of, he is totally independent. He may have been as young as 8 or 10 when he had one of his first experiences with independence. His father gave him a crash course in driving and gave him the keys to what was probably a 1983 Subaru DL wagon. The lesson, indeed, was out of the ordinary. Steer, keep it in gear, and switch off the ignition if you're going to collide with something. That's all. No brakes, no clutch, and the automobile was empty. Only Ivan and his father's unwavering trust. It was simultaneously exciting, horrifying, and unforgettable. At the age of 15, Ian made his first significant financial commitment when he paid $700 to his father for a used 1986 Subaru GL station wagon. The idea was that it didn't run, not even close. His first serious foray into the mechanics realm was fixing it. He worked hard around the homestead, doing whatever needed to be done to pay for it, repairing fences, moving equipment, and even reusing old nails by straightening them. It was a hands-on, muddy kind of work. It wasn't a long-lasting Subaru. Eventually, it was destroyed. However, the lessons Ian took away from it stayed with him forever. Instead of going to college in his 20s, Ian decided to follow a route that would take him far from Alaska, but still close to the harsh realities of life. He worked in the most hazardous conditions to earn money, fighting wildfires in the summers, and traveling the world in the winters. That was more education for him than any classroom could provide. At the age of 22, he went on a motorcycle trip across Indonesia with a close buddy, which stands out as one of his most unforgettable experiences. They began their journey in Bali and traveled more than 2,000 kilometers east, navigating through countless jungles, steep mountain passes, and coastal highways while island hopping on public boats. The view, the heat, and the independence made an impression. In particular, he thinks of the 500 km of unspoiled splendor that is the Sumbawa coastline, with its meandering roads, shimmering waters, and majestic mountains. Speed wasn't the point. Wearing only shorts and t-shirts, they were to bask in the experience and feel the warmth of the tropics on their skin. But it wasn't all sunshine and roses. His pal suffered severe burns to his leg in a major crash on the island of Flores. They were forced to return to civilization, since they were far from assistance and deep in the woods. Riding through enormous rice paddies in complete darkness was the most terrifying experience. All around them, lightning was crackling and rain was pouring down. As the highest point in the area and a prime target for lightning, they were riding on an elevated road. In order to protect themselves, they hid behind a semi-truck and used it as a temporary lightning shield while they counted down the minutes till they arrived at the safety of the town. It's one of Ian's most vivid and cherished memories, despite the anxiety. Ian applied those teachings when he returned to Alaska and established his life on the same plot of land where his grandfather had formerly lived. He began with a solitary cabin and gradually grew it into a complete homestead, complete with gardens, fields, and everything needed for an independent way of life. He wasn't by himself either. Eve has been his partner through it all. The history of Eve and Ian dates back to their early years. Both of them were raised close to the Kilcher farmhouse on nearby farms. Eve divided her time between her mother, who lived in Gustavos, close to Glacier Bay National Park, and her father, who resided in Homer, close to Ian's family. Eve and Evan ended up attending the same high school when Eve moved in with her dad full-time. Their friendship finally blossomed into love after they graduated together in 2001. As befitted a couple so deeply rooted in the earth, they were married in August 2011, in a ceremony with a nature theme. Eve is the constant energy behind the homestead's thriving garden, while Ian concentrates on construction and hunting. The growth season in Alaska is a pitiful 4 months. Eve, however, makes each day matter. She turns even the smallest areas of land into something useful by growing a variety of veggies with meticulous preparation and unrelenting work. She does everything she can to prepare the family for the long, hard winter by canning, preserving, and preparing when harvest time comes. However, they were caught off guard by the outside world, which was poised to intervene and alter everything. There has always been a sense of mystery around Alaska, the biggest and most untamed state in America. They refer to it as the last frontier for precisely this reason. The fact that so much of the land is still undeveloped naturally aroused interest. TV producers quickly discovered that viewers were captivated by the idea of people living off the grid in such a distant location. The Kilcher family was eventually discovered by Discovery Channel, which is constantly searching for interesting Alaskan stories. In a turn of events that could only occur in the internet age, a producer contacted AAN via Facebook to inquire about the family's interest in appearing on a reality program. Alaska, the final frontier, was born in an instant. Several Kilcher clan members were the subject of the show. Otto and Charlotte, ATS Lee and Jane, Atz and his wife Bonnie, and, of course, Ian and Eve. Their daily activities, which were all focused on rural life, were captured on camera. In order to prepare for the harsh Alaskan winter, they took on 3 essential tasks every summer: gathering firewood, making their dwellings winterproof, and making sure they had enough food for both themselves and their animals. Summers weren't a time off. It was a race against the clock. The show's extensive exploration of actual homesteading was what made it unique. It wasn't without its detractors either. Some viewers thought the show overemphasized the survival element, particularly when it made routine activities like hunting and woodworking seem like life or death situations. The Kilters were not entirely isolated after all. If things became difficult, they could always go to the nearby town of Homer. However, for many, the show's appeal lay not in whether or not all of the threats were genuine, but rather in the way it portrayed a resilient, traditional, and self-sufficient way of life. When the series premiered on December 29, 2011, it didn't take long to introduce viewers to the family and their distinctive way of life. As the main performers, ATS and Otto told tales about their father, Yule, a Swiss immigrant who came to Alaska in search of real freedom. Yule dreamed of a life where his family could live off the land and make ends meet on their own terms, far from the craziness of the contemporary world. That was a major theme in the early episodes. Despite having only 3 episodes, the first season, which was simply named Alaska, left a lasting impression. It accompanied the family on their last tense hunting trip before winter, which became even more pressing after some of their cattle were killed by bear attacks. In the second episode, they hurried to prepare for winter. A search for a missing cow and calf in the snow-covered countryside in episode 3 further intensified the situation. Discovery revived the show in October 2012 with a full season of 15 episodes due to its increasing popularity. The second season got off to a great start. While attempting to assist a fellow homesteader, Otto and he encountered difficult circumstances and food shortages. After winter subsided, the family resumed their hunting, fishing, and wood-milling activities, particularly for king salmon. Ian, who started the series at the beginning, immediately won over fans. Although it took him a while to get used to being on camera, he eventually came to appreciate the chance the show provided him to spread awareness of sustainability and independent living. He saw the event as a chance to showcase his wide variety of abilities, which included furniture creation, mechanics, and carpentry. He frequently underlined that people could learn to do these things if he could. Viewers' comments demonstrated that the message was getting across. Fans frequently came up to the Kilters, or messaged them to remark that the show had given them the idea to develop vegetable gardens or construct backyard chicken coop hoops. For the family, that kind of response meant the world, because in the end, that was the main purpose of Alaska, the last frontier, encouraging others to reestablish a connection with nature and embrace self-sufficiency. The stark contrast between their personal lives and the wilderness the Kilchers call home is one of the things that attracts viewers. The Kilchers live in a spot where nature dictates the pace and society seems worlds away, in contrast to most people who must navigate the bustling streets and continual sounds of the metropolis. That, in Eivin's opinion, is a major factor in the show's emotional impact. It appeals to a very human side. Nonetheless, there is always some interest in how much of the show is actually unscripted. Just like with any reality show, the show capitalizes on the stress of racing against the clock before winter arrives and the constant threat of running out of supplies. Otto's notorious procrastination has resulted in some truly suspenseful situations, such as the time he and Anne became stranded overnight after misjudging the tide. Such incidents not only heighten the tension, but also highlight the harsh realities of living off the grid, and occasionally the conflict it causes between a parent and son. Season 6 gave fans another look at a lifestyle that is very different from contemporary convenience. When it debuted in October 2015, the daily grind of hunting, cultivating, and gathering to put food on the table is all that exists on the Kilcher homestead. There is no indoor plumbing or short trips to the store. Eventually, a new idea was inspired by that grounded way of existence. In 2016, Atsley and Eve published a cookbook called Homestead Kitchen. After receiving an approach from a literary agent, Atsley freely acknowledges that Eve performed the true culinary magic, even though he provides the meat and unusual ingredients. He claims that she created over 80% of the recipes herself, many of them from scratch. The cookbook contains more than just a list of recipes. It provides a glimpse of their lifestyle. Fans asked them innumerable questions about frontier cooking, and they wanted to respond. This book, which is full with family images and personal tales that demonstrate their intense passion for farming, provided a means for them to communicate their world more deeply than the show ever could. Furthermore, they do not work as professional cooks. And the point is precisely that. The recipes are straightforward, useful, and made for actual people who, after a long day outside, don't want to use every pot in the kitchen. It's an ideal starting place for novices. It may also seem familiar to experienced cooks, but that's part of its allure, because it's not only food that Homestead Kitchen has to offer. It's an Alaskan festivity. In order to inspire readers to learn more about their local ecosystems, Eve purposefully included elements that could be difficult to get elsewhere, and many of the ingredients are native to their area. It's a cookbook that also serves as a call to creativity and the great outdoors. The tiny anecdotes interspersed with the recipes, such as the battle to protect poultry from predators, or a comedy-filled Butte mishap, are what truly make the book stand out. Certain passages, such as the comparison of potato digging to finding Spanish treasure, obviously veer into poetic area. Even those charming, unduly idealized moments, however, are rooted in genuine experience and a deep affection for the place. Of course, not all of the book feels unvarnished and unadulterated. It's an honest attempt to capture the happiness, sweat, and sometimes confusion of living off the grid. While some of the stories come off as a little too idealistic, growing, foraging, and cooking, in a way that feels genuine and rooted in the land, is more important than the fine dining experience. Fans were given a closer look at one of Eivin Kilcher's most impressive projects, his custom boat, the Fair North Rose, in a memorable 2017 episode of Alaska, The Last Frontier. This was no ordinary fishing vessel hidden away in Homer. Designed for serious Alaskan adventures, it was a tough landing craft that measured 32.5 feet in length and 10 feet in width. It's true that not everything of the book feels raw or unvarnished. It's a sincere attempt to convey the happiness, the labor, and the occasional chaos that come with living off the grid. Even though there are some dreamy moments, it has nothing to do with fine dining. It's about cultivating your own food, cooking with intention, gathering what the land provides, and transforming it into meals that have a sense of authenticity. Speaking of real, a remarkable 2017 episode of Alaska, The Last Frontier, gave viewers a close-up look at Eivin Kilcher's handiwork. At that point, he debuted the Fair North Rose, a custom-built yacht that is among his most stunning creations. However, this was not your typical fishing vessel cruising Homer. Built rugged for serious Alaskan travel, this landing craft was 32.5 feet long and 10 feet wide. It was powerful enough to navigate difficult waters, thanks to its dual 225 horsepower outboard motors, and surprisingly comfortable inside. With luxurious living accommodations and a top speed of 40 mph, it was built with long trips in mind. It could cruise steadily at 25 mph. Its enormous 250-gallon fuel tank allowed it to go around 425 miles when fully charged, making it an excellent choice for off-grid adventures. Eivin addressed other mechanical marvels that year, though. At about the same time, he embarked on a side endeavor that was somewhat more personal, repairing a Subaru Brat from the mid-1980s. This was no mere fixer-upper for amusement. Since he was a little boy, Eivin had dreamed of owning this car, and he made every effort to customize it. On the farmstead, the Bratley stood out for its usefulness, as well as its appearance. It could drive into town for groceries as readily as it could hit the trails. As far as Eivin was concerned, it was the first side-by-side ATV that was permitted for the streets. The raised stance and all-terrain improvements made it feel like a compact, fuel-efficient truck. Even though most people called it a car, it was agile, strong, and ideal for Alaskan living. Then 2019 arrived, and Alaska, The Last Frontier, provided one of its most memorable experiences. Eivin and Levi Kilcher, brothers, climbed a cliffside that resembled anything from Free Solo. This time, though, it was actual life in the wilds of Alaska. They were equipped with ropes. They wore helmets. The purpose of this was not to chase adrenaline. It was a matter of survival. In order to help the entire Kilcher family put food on the table, the brothers set out to find a new hunting area. They had to overcome that sheer rock face first, though. As they climbed, Levi shouted out to Eivin as they examined the imposing wall they had fled more than 10 years before. While some of the bolts had rusted, others were still in good condition. Back then, they had never achieved success. However, now that they had a specific objective, they were committed to completing what they had begun, and had arrived at the high-altitude region known as Goat Country. This was more than just hunting and climbing for Eivin. It was about getting back in touch with his brother and their common history. They used to often engage in activities like this, and he saw it as a means of making lifelong memories. Levi, however, maintained his composure, Since the highest parts of the climb were the most hazardous and technically challenging, he was aware of the dangers that lay ahead. Eivin Kilcher does a lot of different things outside of these crazy escapades. He has held positions as a writer, firefighter, machinist, welder, and reality TV star over the years. He is renowned for using backhoes and excavators to enlarge and shape the area surrounding his family cottage on his homestead. Eivin, however, is really a subsistence man. He's out tracking deer, moose, and bears, or putting out lines for trout, salmon, and halibut instead of cultivating crops. With the attitude of using everything and honoring every living thing he harvests, he collects clams, mussels, berries, seaweed, and mushrooms. His strong bond with nature influences how he provides for and safeguards his family. Eve, his wife, contributes her strengths. Her focus is on gathering, growing, and conserving food through gardening and foraging. Eivin and Eve work together as a contemporary partnership, bringing a new perspective to traditional off-the-grid living methods. Even though they live off the grid, they maintain a relationship with their followers on social media by frequently sharing updates, photos of their families, and behind-the-scenes glimpses of homestead life. Additionally, Eve started selling customized copies of her cookbook in late 2022, implying that she would be moving toward a full-time writing career and possibly taking a break from reality TV. The pair have started a website where they discuss more of their interests, many of which are just as important to who they are, even though they don't always appear in the shows.